And we are live. Well, data storytellers. I have Jean-François Deldon here with me, who is an entrepreneur and data leader over at Michelin. And we are going to have an exciting discussion. Jean-François, welcome on the show.
Thanks. Welcome, Lezo.
Fantastic. So Jean-François, you are an entrepreneur and data leader at Michelin. Which can mean a lot of different things. So first of all, can you just make a quick introduction into what you actually do over at the iconic French tire manufacturer, and what does that actually mean? What is your entrepreneurial effort there, and what does it mean to be a data leader in your position?
Yes. So as you said, I'm intrapreneur and data leader. It's really two separate roles. The first one, that is intrapreneur, is really about developing new businesses for Michelin. And it's an interesting part because, you jump into the place of a startupper, kind of that, and you try to build something from scratch, using and leveraging, of course, all the possibilities of a big group like Michelin to be able to go faster and to develop new activities. In my situation, it's something about taste, about gastronomy, a kind of extension of the good pleasures that we try to push to people when they go to see a restaurant. We try to see what we can do in other places, and if we can help people to have great experiences about taste in their everyday life. And the interesting part is that we are looking at digital and data and what they can bring to the consumers, to the food professionals and so on, to help them to leverage everything about taste in their experiences. So that's the first part about being an intrapreneur. And a data leader is in fact that in Michelin, I'm leading the natural language processing community group at the group level, helping the businesses to identify their use cases, to identify the solutions to solve their use cases, but also acting on the technical side to help the data science teams and so on to identify what are the key resources they need to have and the resources they need to put on the NLP part to be able to push all the value needed for Michelin.
Okay, now that sounds really exciting, especially because what you just articulated on one side, it's all about experience. It's all about, being part of something that's super high cognition, like the Michelin star. It's associated with that premium feel. And then, so on one hand, you have the experience and the customer, and then on the other, you have something that sounds highly technical, like natural language processing and all that stuff. So how do these two come together in your role? What is the association? If you could talk about that a little bit, that'd be fantastic, because one thing that we always like to explore is that connection between the business, technology, and people, and how to make data more human as well.
Yes, that's really the interesting part and the important part when you are trying to leverage data as an industry. It's really to connect all those parts. The place where it takes all this importance is really about how do you get for something like experience. Experience can be, of course, the Michelin stars, but at Michelin more widely, we look at it for the customer experience, for people buying tires, for our distributors, our dealers all over the world, where we collect the messages and so on. And we try to identify through the messages and everything they give us, what do they really feel about the interaction with Michelin, or about what they are being given as an experience. And this is particularly something that a place where finally we pushed all the technology in there. It means that when people are giving you feedback on an experience, it's always difficult to identify what do they really feel about it and what are the keys that provoked this feeling. Of course, you can give them a notation, a mark to be put. Do you like it or not? Would you recommend to a friend or colleague this kind of experience? This is easy to interpret, but the most interesting part is most often relying in the open text where people express why. And this really needs artificial intelligence and data to be leveraged. That's for sure a place where natural language processing takes all its place by identifying the topics, by identifying the sentiments, by identifying sometimes the intents of people. Is there churn or not, or something like that, to be able to take concrete actions after that, meaning sending a representative to the store. It can be, taking care of what consumers says about us to identify a potential insight about what they would expect from a tire for their experience in restaurants and so on, at a very wide level. Even about connected mobility, how people are moving today. These are things that you can analyze through experience analytics, and that can drive you to, let's say, either improvement of your ongoing offers or creation of new offers and activities.
So experience analytics. So that sounds super exciting. What actually landed you in this role? So if you could just talk a little bit about the evolution of what you've been doing over at Michelin, maybe even before Michelin. So what brought you to the data world, and how are you now occupying such an exciting position?
So, in fact, I started at Michelin 10 years ago in numerical science. I did a civil engineering school with math and computer sciences. And when I came to Michelin, it was to develop numerical tools for tire designers. So that was my first role in R&D. That was also super exciting because you try to simulate what the tire will really, how we will react during several situations and so on, before creating them and testing them. So it's trying to save money at the early stage. And then at some point, I wanted to discover more how worked a big company like Michelin. And I switched totally different role in internal audit, but in data for internal audit, which was really interesting because internal audit works for all the company. So you had, I had the opportunity to work for industry, for commerce, for marketing, for a lot of possibilities, identifying the underlying risks of the activities and trying to put data behind it. When I came, it was to be a data analyst first, and I soon considered and understood that doing proof of concepts was good, but not enough. So I started to talk to my teams, to my managers. I think that we should invest more in strategy and culture so that everyone can understand what they can do, to have maybe a network of people, of analysts. Sometimes now we call it citizen data scientists or citizen data analysts, but this kind of network of people that are aware of what we can do with data, and that can be the relays, the local relays of data. And when I started working on that, a few months after, I've been appointed digital and data transformation leader for internal audit, internal control, customer centricity and quality for Michelin. So one of the big entity of Michelin. And the interesting part of that is that as I had customer centricity in that role also, I could really start to work on experience because Michelin has started a switch that was before, the quality was more the product quality. I mean, we really wanted tires that were perfect, operations that were perfect, and so on. Now we want good operations and good experiences, and I would say perfect experiences. So we switch from zero default quality from the product standpoint to 100% satisfaction from experience standpoint for our customer. At least it's our goal. Meaning that if I give a quick example, when you look at supply chain and so some entities like that, key indicators are often 100% on-time deliveries, which is difficult to attain. Whereas when you are looking to customer satisfaction, sometimes you have customers that do not totally want 100% on-time delivery because they could bear if they have some delays and so on. So the question is more, what are the kind of delays that you can accept customer by customer so that our experience score based on the on-time delivery is good. This is just a quick example, but working on customer centricity, we started to question a lot of questions like that. And to answer them, we had to put a lot of data analytics in to identify what in the experience was important and to analyze the customer messages, all the feedbacks we had. That's how we started the NLP process, NLP, let's say, journey. So we started with that. As I was one of the first in Michelin to start NLP projects, and I really like to share experiences, and I think it's the basis of improvements and to go faster and quicker and easier on these kind of topics. I had a lot of people from other entities saying, okay, I want to join this group to be able to go further on it. And it turned out that at the same time at Michelin, an entity called Artificial Intelligence Transformation Factory has been created and was hosting something called guilds, which were groups of people acting on some topics like computer vision and so on. So I created the one on natural language processing and became the leader of it, with a little difference compared to the others. That is, I really wanted to mix people from business and people from the technical data side. So really in this guild, both are there to be able to talk at the same time of the needs and of the potential solution. So I did that. It worked well. We are progressing. We are trying to improve in culture, in strategy on that field for Michelin. And a few months ago, I've been proposed the role in intrapreneurship that I found very interesting for two reasons. The first one is that it really helps to confront to business side, which is a key when you're doing data. So I really wanted to have that experience for myself. And the second one is, of course, it can leverage a lot of digital and data experience that I accumulated before. So I found also the real experiment of what I proposed, the solutions and so on, in position of a business guy was a great thing to do.
Okay, now this is fascinating. When you mentioned that a lot of people took notice and they wanted to be a part of this. So how did that happen? Did you have to do a lot of internal promotion? Did you use senior management? Did you engage middle management? What was your strategy to evangelize data and get people interested?
In fact, we go through different ways. The first way was really internal promotion to several actors that I knew could have needs similar to the ones I had. For example, I focused at people that analyzed a few messages from employees. So I went to HR to say, okay, we have that kind of solution to analyze the messages from our customers. Would you be interested to do that with employee messages? And it turned out that yes, they did. I went to people doing social analytics because so far they were analyzing it with, manual ways or things like that. And I knew that with the amount of data they had, analyzing the messages was also key. So I started with, let's say, use cases or entities that could have use cases close to mine to be able to do a self-promotion round. And of course, a second way, or more a management way, with senior leaders of the company, we exposed to the solutions we developed. We exposed to also our vision of a data-driven company. I remember me telling them that we are like an orchestra, and it doesn't take only one player to play the data-driven symphony, but we need a full orchestra to play that, so that they can feel really involved, and to say that we can't be data-driven as a whole if everyone is not involved. So there was also that kind of channel that was interesting to collect a few other people. And finally, the last thing we did was communicating a lot on our social internal networks and so on, to be able to reach people that are not at the senior level, that might be not the ones you targeted at first, but that are still interested either to know what is possible to do, or that have needs but have not in their close environment people that are able to help them. And so we leveraged it to find other people, and we grew like that.
Okay, that's amazing. So you basically decided to launch that campaign, that attack on multiple fronts. Where did you experience the bottleneck? So what was the biggest challenge for you, if anything? Because a lot of times I know that it's super smooth and everything falls into place, but oftentimes you experience resistance in different areas. Where did you experience the most of that?
I think there are two things that come to my mind on that part. The first one is about time and resources. People were very excited to go to meetings, to gather together to talk about these topics. The important point was to find what interested them really and what was worth their time. Mostly because I decided also, and we decided to connect people from business and from data. So you have to identify well the topics you express, the discussion you will have, so that people from the business are happy because you do not speak to technical, and people from technical part are happy because we do not speak only about business and value. So let's say that the organization of it and the value for time invested was a big topic, and also for me because in fact I did work on that guild, for example, at the same time that I'm working on my other job. So even for me, the time was a constraint. We solved it this year by allocating a new people only for animation. So it really smoothed everything because the guy was able to collect the things that people wanted to share, to come back to them, to help them concretely build their use cases, to put it in the internal portfolio and so on. So it really was let's say time saving and a wonderful thing to recruit this guy because it helped us a lot. So that's really the first point. And maybe the second one is about how do you prove the value of this kind of action? We decided to look at simple indicators and on simple on things we gather together. For example, on some specific use cases like the one I expressed about analyzing messages from surveys and so on, we analyzed on new use cases like that came, how much time we spent to from the start to the production. And we monitored that it was really decreasing the time each time we have a new project. And we were happy at the end because, for example, we started on my first topic. I think it took about a year to have a concrete product to show. And on the last one that showed up, it was more about 1 week or 2 weeks to be able to do that. So we really progressed in that, and we are looking at indicators like that, and maybe also the covering in terms of entity and Michelin as expansion indicators, but also on success indicators.
When you hired that guy, I immediately thought that was a real intrapreneurial move. This is usually the biggest challenge for entrepreneurs as well, to outsource activities properly and take that leap of faith. But then when you find the right person to do the right job with a very specific process, then the return on investment is huge. So that's interesting. And then how do you think that during this journey of you engaging the business and then bringing data closer to the business, how do you think that the perception of data changed throughout the organization? I mean, you've been there for 10 years, and then 10 years is an immensely long time in the data world. But how do you think that perception of data analytics and data-driven working changed in Michelin over the 10 years that you spent there?
I think it has changed a lot. I mean that when I came in the company 10 years ago, pretty much nobody was speaking about data, or really little. Whereas now the world is present pretty much everywhere, every time. So it really changed in the mindset. I would say that people now know that data is really important to take decisions. So I would say there's a real will from everybody to use data as often as possible. Whereas a few years ago, it was more still about perception, about intuition, about doing studies that could take long, still working on experience, because before I was talking about experience analytics, but Before we relied on experience, feeling, and so on. So now I really, even if in Michelin we relied on facts, but sometimes the facts were difficult to get. And as I mentioned, on surveys, when you did something with a lot of potential data points at that point, at that date, it was difficult to get the real statistics about that. So you focused on big statistics and on some feeling, whereas now you're really working on on extracting the real value that lies into the data. You can go real deeper, and there's a real concern about using data as much time as possible. Still, there's still a will in most of the cases. It means that, of course, when you have a big company like Michelin, even if we're progressing very fast on that field, you have still entities, you have still people that do not have easy access to the data. So behind the wheel, I think that there's still habits, let's say, to install or things like that, to say to people, you must be active in sharing your data. Because a lot of people are still waiting for data. Which is good. We went from, okay, there's data somewhere, but there might be data, to, okay, let's use data if we have. And now we need to go to, okay, let's make sure that we have data, we share data, and we can use data properly wherever we are in Michelin. And so to do that, we have to all go a step further and to be aware that if we want to use data, we need to share it. We need to all agree about the way we share it so that we can retrieve it properly and so on. Of course, there are solutions in the market or sometimes internally developed in companies that help to do that in the management of data. But I think that it's really the place we are in. Some entities are well advanced, but we need to go a step further on that in Michelin.
So what is your aspirational vision for Michelin when it comes to data-driven ways of working? What is that place that you would like to have the company in when, if we could just maybe run that thought experiment of, in an ideal world, everything goes well, where would you like to lead that data-driven initiative within Michelin? And then I will have some questions about how to actually get there.
Great. So yes, if I'm talking in my dreams, that we talk, for example, for the NLP part, I would really like that anyone in Michelin identifies some things that can be useful for him, that can create value, that he would have simple ways to do it. I even talk in the guild easy and fast way to implement technologies that can be useful to build value for the business. And it's really that. It means that I have a need. I can find easily either a tool or a guy that will help me to implement what is needed to have a first idea of, would it solve my need? Does it answer to it? Then, if it's the case, and I would say that it might take half a day or 1 day, and not weeks, as I was mentioning before. So you just do it in pretty much no time. And then if it's useful, you have easy ways to contact people that can industrialize, or a platform that can industrialize it for you. You can really put it in your common dashboards if necessary and so on. But really, I think it about a smooth data experience for people, where people are aware of what they can do with data, either themselves or with the local relay. It's why I really like the position of data analyst. And in my position in internal audit, quality, and so on, I pushed so that we had data analysts from business that are trained on data, so that they can have really this deep business knowledge, but also the knowledge of what they can do with data simply and so on. So let's say that coming from a business problem to a data solution in an easy way, it being for a proof of concept and then industrialization. And I would just add something about the fact that you can monitor the value created and adjust if necessary. So at the same time, the easiness, the rapidity to do it, but also the possibility to pivot and to improve continually the thing in an intrapreneurial way, if I come back to your terms.
And I would love to then also explore each of those areas. What do you think, before we get there, what do you think that this would allow Michelin to do that the business is just not capable of right now? What would this enable? What would this really? What would be the impact on Michelin as a business if this aspirational vision, this dream that you have, would actually become a reality?
I think it will unlock a lot of potential that is now lying into databases and just resting down and not being worried to be contacted by someone that want to use it. I really think that when you start doing that and push into people fast and easy ways to build, let's say, proof of concept solutions that use the data, you unlock a lot of potential because you will be able to cross data from many fields and really you will be able to create a lot of value. If I give a quick example that was working for experience analytics on customers that are dealers and so on, if there is a dealer that is saying something about Michelin, so 10 years ago, you read it, and you say, okay, I have to do something with it. Now you will be able to identify all the customers that are saying, for example, I have not seen the sales representative for 10 months, let's say, or 12 months or anything, because you will be able to identify this kind of topics. If you identify that, then you will unlock the power of the commercial guy saying, okay, commercial director would say, okay, I want to see what are the sales representatives associated to it to be able to identify and to connect to the visits of the sales representatives that have been there to be, okay, the guy is saying that, is it just an impression? Is it really something real? If it's just an impression, then we have to make better impression when we go see him because he doesn't remember that we have been there. If it's not an impression, then maybe we have to reinforce our visits or to find another way of doing business with this customer. So really, you're starting to unlock this kind of potential by connecting databases and putting into the hands of business things they do not have. And it's really endless because if you do that, then another guy, maybe from marketing, will say, okay, I will launch maybe a new campaign. The previous one have not worked well with this kind of customers. They have complained of that. They have not been seen. And then you grow up on that and you unlock more and more business potential, for example, on that field, by just analyzing more and more and deeper and deeper by unlocking the data potential of each entity that will build upon what has been built in other places to go faster and to, in fact, to increase the business in that case. But you can definitely imagine it to increase customer or employee satisfaction, to reduce time loss in tasks that are not useful, and this can be plenty of things in a company like Michelin.
This is a great example because a lot of times what we noticed over the years is that data is still being dissociated from actual business results, even in the minds of people. So this just shows so well that there are real stakes. So this is real revenue lost. This is real potential in terms of how people enjoy working at Michelin, the kind of successes that they get, the momentum that the business can build. So this is absolutely real. It's not just about numbers and technology, but actual results on the front lines of the business. And it has immense impact on the brand value and your sales directly. So there's definitely a lot to gain and a lot to lose in this data game for big companies. So when you think about your dream vision, there's obviously a huge return on investment there. So what's the gap? What's the nature of the gap between where you are now and where you would like to get? What do you see as being the biggest challenge for you right now when you try to instill that data-driven working? And we can spend some time maybe on the questions of data-driven culture, data governance, data access, as you mentioned it. So now for you as a data leader, if you think about your plan of attack, where do you see the key battles to take place?
It's an important question, and there's a lot to do on those fields. I say that my first battle is on data culture. We've already done a lot on it because I think that when I put data culture, I see different layers. The first one that I want to reach is really people really knowing what they can do or cannot do with data. It's really true for NLP, where we try to put a lot of conferences on and a lot of sessions with people from Michelin explaining their concrete use cases, saying what they achieved, what they were not able to achieve also, because we want also to break the data magic that people can see sometimes and think, okay, I put my data in and I will have a lot of value just by giving my data and not putting any effort out of that. So really, the first thing we want to achieve is, okay, what is real, what is not real, what can you do, what you can do, and what are the efforts associated. That's one of our first baton. The second thing is really building a strategy. On this strategy, we want to focus, and we try to focus now on what we can gather. To give a quick example, on NLP, there are technologies that exist that may give a lot of benefits in not a lot of time, that are quite spread, like chatbots or things like that. So what we had is we identified all people interested in that. We built some RFP and so on, and we built a whole process to identify one partner that can fit most of the needs or all the needs in our cases. And we want to do it even more on the use case that are widely used. So it means for topic modeling, for other things that are quite common and people have similar needs in terms of technologies. Then we want to have good platforms, good solutions, so that we can spread. It's what we call quick wins, in fact, in our terms. It's really, we want to identify the quick wins. It means people that have already proven some value in their fields, and we know that there are other needs. We want to provide to all the others easy ways to go there, to get there and to unlock the potential, to be able to go to the next steps and to the next layers. So it's really culture and strategy are our two first elements. And the third one is about access. Access to the data, because there's a good will to access to the data, but it is sometimes difficult. So we want to improve it to make easy access to the data. Data easy to understand, because having easy access is not sufficient. You need to have a good explanation of the data and what you have in the database. And also easy access to the models we used. It means that we're trying to develop something that when in a common product, there are data scientists that takes time to train the models, that business have taken time to annotate data and so on. We want to be able to reuse it and to give it to the community, to be reused in future products, to be potentially used in proof of concept by businesses, data analysts, and so on. So they're really this triptych: the culture, the strategy, and the access.
So what you're saying is basically that the culture aspect and also the enablement that's important to ultimately shift the perspective of people and how they perceive data. Now, once you have that, I imagine that data-driven working is not just data-driven thinking. Just the fact that someone sees the value in data, or just the fact that someone has access to data, doesn't necessarily mean that they will change their way of working. So in that kind of grand effort of educating the business, how important do you think communications and storytelling is? So I'm kind of leading the witness here, but I would be interested in your take, based on your years of experience now, that apart from your technical know-how, which is super important, and having everything lined up on the technological side, how important were the soft skills of communicating with people, building relationships, and telling impactful stories?
It's really important, and it's important in all the parts. But for data, it's all the parts of the job. It means data, but also when you have a new business and so on. But for data, it's very important to tell stories, because, in fact, and we've seen it in Michelin, if you just talk about a use case and that's it, okay, people, it's nice to know, but I don't really get, what was behind it, which value you get, in fact, why you get there, in fact, why did you choose to use this kind of data? What did it bring, and what are the next steps for you? For example, if I talked about the customer experience, if I just say, okay, we do analyze the feedbacks and put it in categories, okay, but it has no value. So said like that, you're just Okay, spending your time putting some annotation in front of rows, it's great, but what do you do with that? If I say what I explained to you before, it means, okay, let's start by analyzing the messages. It will help us to identify the categories, to give it to the right entities so that they can take actions to improve the experience of the customers. And we identified that in sales or in customer satisfaction, based on these elements, we had an improvement. There's a different story. There's a story. And people can see, okay, you did that, you achieved that. Maybe you have difficulties doing that. Okay, you were not able to identify all the categories, or some of them were not present because there are too few numbers of messages talking about it. But you get some value, or at least you identified the value you would get, and you were able to measure it. And this is very important. That's why we tried to achieve on the conference and the presentation of the use cases. It means that when we're going to someone to tell the story of the use cases we built, we really want to put the full package, not only what has been achieved technically, because this is very interesting for the technical guys, but you need to convince the business people that they will win time, that they will win sales, that they will have benefits out of it. Because of course, if you tell them, let's be data driven, they will say, okay, yes, we should be data driven, it's facts and so on, and it's modern, so it's cool. But when you really bring them into your world is when you tell them the real story of, okay, this is what we can do and this is what you can get out of it. If you succeed to do that, yes, they will come to your meetings, they will tell you what they need. And I found something really important in that field. I talked about the guys that joined us, and I think that's something he does very well. It means that it takes time with people, not only to talk about, okay, what is possible or not, but really about, okay, what is your real need? Your real need. Why do you need that? Why do you need that? And coming with the whys, having an information about what we can do, and focusing on, okay, but how do we measure? Even in the early stage, how will we measure the success of it? What would you see as a success for this project or for this product? And by doing that, taking time, because I think that in this communication and telling and storytelling part of the data, it's really important to have someone that can take time to do it really properly. It really help people. And I think that since he arrived, we had more than 10 or 15 new use cases on NLP. He has not been there for a long time, but really it improved the way that people see it, understand it, and are able to push it into the process. Because if you don't go all that way with some accompaniment, people get the message, but might be not totally convinced, or if they're convinced, they might not have the time to identify what they should do to put a new project and so on. So it really helped us a lot.
Jean-François, I think this will be a wonderful point to finish on because it was so well said. And I also want to let you go. I know you're a busy man and that the data-driven change will not evangelize itself over at Michelin, but I immensely enjoyed the conversation. Genuinely, it was really good. We will have a lot to work with in this particular interview. Just as a final word of advice for your fellow entrepreneurs and data leaders. Now we're in the 2020s, right? It's promising to be a very exciting decade for everyone who is involved in data. What would be your personal recommendation for anyone who would like to make lasting change in their businesses?
I would say focus on people. It's really something that is generally said, but really people is important. And in fact, the example I just presented before was saying that one guy helped us a lot is really expressing that. It means that, in fact, it's because there's a guy that takes time to go to see other people, to evangelize and so on, that we can do so much change. And I really think that the change is coming more from people than from tools. Tools will always find the right tools to do what we want to do. But what we need is people helping other people to identify the value and what they want to tell with their data, for their businesses, so the value they want to create, that is important. So my advice is really focus on people and on the value you can deliver to them.
Fantastic. Well, Jean-François, thank you very much for your input. This has been a fun conversation and highly educational. And we hope to see you on the show some other time. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.